Picture a bed the size of a small room. 10 feet wide, 11 feet long, carved oak posts as thick as a man's waist. Built in England around 1590 and famous enough that Shakespeare joked about it in Twelfth Night. Now fill it with strangers, not a couple, not a family, strangers, travellers who have never met, boots off, coats on, lying shoulder to shoulder in the dark, breathing each other's breath. Add the smell of wet wool steaming by a dying fire. Add a man who snores like a sawpit, and another whose cold feet keep finding your shins. Add the fact that nobody in that bed thinks any of this is strange, because for most of human history this was simply what a bed was for. Bodies, plural, warmth, plural. That's the world your great-great-great-grandparents slept in, every single night. A world where sharing a mattress with a stranger at an inn was as unremarkable as sharing a bench on a train is now. A world where the question, "Do you sleep alone?" would have sounded less like a question about your marriage and more like a question about your poverty, your bad luck, or your fleas. And then, in the space of about 2 generations, Americans talked themselves out of it. Doctors preached against the shared bed. Furniture catalogues sold its replacement. Hollywood made the replacement law. By the middle of the 20th century, a respectable American married couple was expected to sleep in 2 separate beds, a nightstand's width of carpet between them, like polite ships anchored in the same harbour. And then, just as completely, the whole thing reversed. The same breed of expert who had prescribed separate beds began prescribing the opposite. The double bed came roaring back, swelled into the Queen, then the King, and the twin beds went off to the guest room in the summer cottage, carrying their strange half-century with them. Tonight we're going to follow that whole arc, from the crowded colonial bed to the germ-fearing Victorian bedroom, through the department store showrooms of the 1920s, past the censors' offices of Hollywood, into the twin-bedded suburbs of the 1950s, and out the other side into the king-size reversal. Not as a lecture. We're going to lie down in each of those rooms, one by one, and feel what the night felt like there. One thing before we go, because this channel runs on trust and I intend to keep it. The rooms in this story are real. The dates are real. The doctors, the manuals, the catalogues, the movie code, the television shows, real, and I'll name them. But the particular pairs of eyes I'll lend you, the traveller in the inn bed, the wife with the household manual, the couple in the showroom, those are composites stitched together from the kind of people who were actually there. Because no single sleeper left us a diary that covers 300 years. And when a number comes from a furniture trade sheet or a magazine survey rather than a census, I'll say so out loud. Some of the statistics in this story were produced by people who were trying to sell you a bed, and you deserve to know which ones. I will always tell you which is which. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I've given up trying to figure out whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who find it soothing to hear Victorian doctors argue about whose exhalations are poisoning whom in the marital bed. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable, preferably in whatever bed arrangement you've personally settled on. Tonight, of all nights, no judgment. Here we go. The cold finds you first, not the smell. The cold, a specific cold, the kind that gets into the bones of a wooden building in New Jersey in December and stays there until April. You've been riding since before dawn, and your feet stopped reporting for duty somewhere around the last ford, and now you're standing in the main room of a roadside tavern in the year 1774, holding your hat, dripping gently onto the floorboards, and the landlord is telling you there is one bed left. One bed. Not one room, one bed. You'll be sharing, he says, in the tone of a man stating that water is wet. Gentleman from Philadelphia and a drover. Quiet sleepers, both, or near enough. And here's the thing you need to understand. The thing that separates that world from ours as sharply as any war or invention. You are not surprised. You are not offended. You do not ask for the manager, because he is the manager, and he is being generous. A bed with only 2 other men in it, in December, on a busy post road. That's not an insult. That's practically luxury. You've slept 4 to a bed. You've slept on the floor of a garret with 9 other travellers arranged like cordwood while rain came through the shingles. You once paid good money to sleep on 2 pushed-together chairs beside a tavern fire, and considered it money well spent because the fire was on your side of the room. So you nod and you pay. Supper, hay for the horse, and a share of the bed, all itemised in the landlord's ledger like the ordinary commodities they are. And you climb the stairs. The smell arrives on the landing. Layers of it, the way inhabited rooms always smelled before the 20th century scrubbed our noses innocent. Tallow smoke, greasy and low, from the candle stub the landlord hands you. Wet leather and wet wool. Drying, never dry. Just drying, an eternal condition. The sweetish farmyard note of the drover himself, who has spent 4 days walking cattle down from the hills, and whose boots stand by the door radiating their history. Under it all, the mattress, straw and feathers and old sweat, the accumulated nights of every traveller who came before you, a smell you don't love but don't hate either, because it is simply the smell of beds, the way the sea smells of salt. The gentleman from Philadelphia has claimed the side nearest the wall, or the warm side, the protected side, the side experienced travellers take when they arrive early, and his early arrival was precisely why he took it. The drover has the middle. You get the outside edge, the cold rim of the known world, where the blanket ends and the draught from the window begins. You take off your boots, your coat stays on, your breeches stay on. Undressing fully for bed, in a shared bed, in an unheated room, in December, would be both eccentric and stupid, and you are neither. You blow out the candle, and you lie down on your allotted third of the mattress, and the ropes under the straw tick creak and shift, and the drover exhales a long ale-scented breath, and the gentleman from Philadelphia says without preamble into the darkness, "I'll thank you not to pull the coverlet the last man pulled." That's it. That's the entire conversation. Bed sharing had rules, and everyone knew them the way you know which way to pass on a sidewalk. You keep to your edge, you don't pull the coverlet, you don't throw an arm. If you must turn over, you turn efficiently, without dragging the bedding into a whirlpool. Cold feet are kept to yourself as far as anatomically possible. Snoring is forgiven, because it must be, because the alternative is that nobody forgives anybody, and nobody ever sleeps again. And you lie there, on your cold edge, listening. This is the sound of a pre-modern night, and it is not silence. The drover's breathing settles into a deep rhythmic soar. Down the hall, through a wall about as soundproof as a bedsheet, a family is putting itself to bed. You can hear the mother's low voice, a child's complaint, the wooden knock of a bedstead against a wall, and then a slow diminishment, voice by voice, like candles being pinched out. Below you, in the main room, the landlord banks the fire. You hear the iron rake, the settling of logs, the thud of the bar dropping across the door. A dog rearranges itself somewhere. The whole house is a single organism going to sleep in sections, and every section can hear every other section. and no one has ever expected otherwise. Because here's what you have to hold on to lying on that edge. Privacy at night is not a thing this world has lost. It's a thing this world has never had. The private bedroom, one door, one bed, one or two carefully chosen occupants, is not the ancient norm from which in-sharing is a rude exception. It's the exception that hasn't been invented yet. In the farmhouses you rode past today, whole families sleep in one chamber, often in one bed. Parents in the middle, children sorted around them by age and size, the baby in a cradle within arm's reach, and if a hired man lives in, he's on a pallet by the hearth or up a ladder in the loft, well within earshot of everything. Not because these people are poor, or not only because they're poor, because a bed is the most expensive piece of furniture most households own in estate inventories of this era. The best bed with its hangings and featherbed is routinely the single most valuable item in the house, worth more than the tables, the chairs, and the plough put together, and because bodies are the only heating system that runs all night for free. And when I say the bed was the heart of the house, I need you to understand what that means in a world without furnaces. This isn't a metaphor. In January, in an unheated chamber where the water in the wash basin freezes solid by morning and your breath falls as frost on the coverlet, the shared bed is the difference between sleeping and enduring. You warm a bed the way you'd bank a fire, with bodies arranged deliberately, the small children tucked between larger ones. The warming pan of coals run between the sheets first if you're lucky enough to own one. A man alone in a bed in deep winter isn't enjoying his privacy. He's losing heat. So the sharing went all the way up. Not just peasants, not just drovers. Servants shared with servants, apprentices with apprentices, sisters with sisters until the day they married and sometimes after. Travellers of genuinely high-standing shared beds at inns, and recorded it in their diaries with, at most, a complaint about the other man snoring, annoyance at the specific bedfellow, never astonishment at the arrangement. In 1704, a sharp-tongued Boston schoolteacher named Sarah Kemble Knight rode from Boston to New York and kept a journal of the road that still survives, and what she complains about is everything: the food, the bed's lumpiness, the drunken arguments coming through the wall of her chamber, one memorable pair of late-night debaters she wished would argue themselves unconscious. Everything except the basic fact of sleeping within sound and reach of strangers. That part needed no comment. That part was the world, and the most famous shared bed in American history. You may know this one, and if you don't, it's a gift. Belongs to two founding fathers. September 1776. John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, travelling together to a peace conference on Staten Island, stop for the night at an inn in New Brunswick, New Jersey. The inn is full. The two of them are given one small room with one bed, and neither man records the slightest surprise at this because there is nothing surprising in it. What Adams does record in his autobiography, in loving irritated detail, is the argument. The window. Adams, afraid of the night air, shuts it. Franklin objects. The air within the room, he declares, is worse than the air without. They will suffocate on their own used breath. Open the window and let him explain his theory of colds, which holds that nobody ever caught a cold from cold air. And Adams lies there in the shared bed while one of the greatest minds of the age lectures him on respiration and contagion, and by his own account falls asleep mid-lecture, leaving Franklin philosophizing into the dark. Hold on to that window, hold on to that argument. Two men in one bed, disputing whether the greater danger is the air outside or the air they themselves are making. The whole rest of this story is folded up inside that argument, and it's going to unfold across a century and a half, and it will end with the bed itself split in two. But in 1776, it's just two tired revolutionaries under one coverlet, and the window for the record stayed open. There's one more piece of this before world you need, because it shows how far the logic of the shared bed could stretch. In parts of colonial New England and among the Pennsylvania Dutch, there was a courtship custom called bundling. A young man courting a young woman, with the family's knowledge, in the family's house, might be permitted to spend the night with her in her bed, clothed, sometimes with her sewn or tied into a bundling sack, or with a long board, a bundling board, set down the middle of the bed like a wooden chaperone. The parents were often asleep in the same room. The economics were straightforward. Farmhouses were far apart. Nights were dark and cold. Sending a suitor home at midnight through January was somewhere between inhospitable and lethal. And firewood and candles cost money that two young people talking quietly under a quilt did not. Travellers from Europe wrote it up with raised eyebrows. A clergyman touring the colonies in the 1750s noted the custom and admitted, to his own surprise, that it seemed to produce no more scandal than the polite alternatives. The custom faded as parlours got stoves and moralists got printing presses. But notice the shape of it. Notice what the bed was in that world. Not a private chamber of intimacy, but a piece of practical furniture where sleeping, courting, talking and warming all happened under supervision, with a board down the middle when required. A board down the middle. Remember that too. This world already knew how to divide a bed. It just saw no reason to divide the sleepers. You drift on your cold edge of the tavern bed, somewhere in the middle of that world. The drover has rolled mercifully toward Philadelphia. The window rattles in its frame. Down the road, in 1,000 dark farmhouses, families lie stacked and sorted in their shared warmth, and will wake in the small hours as people then often did. There was even a name for the two shifts of it, first sleep and second sleep, an old rhythm of broken night documented in court records and diaries across the pre-industrial world. An hour of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the dark for mending the fire, saying a prayer, or lying still and letting the mind wander. And then they will sleep again until the cocks start up. Nobody in any of those beds has ever once wondered whether sharing a mattress is healthy. The question does not exist yet. It's about to be invented. And the men who invent it will carry medical bags. The gaslight hisses. That's the first thing you'd notice if you stepped into this next room. A faint, steady hiss, like a kettle thinking about it, from the bracket on the wall. It is a February evening in 1895 in a narrow brick row house in Brooklyn, and you are a woman of 34, and you're sitting up in bed, the double bed, the marriage bed, walnut headboard, 9 years old, a wedding purchase, reading a book that is about to ruin it for you. The book is a household health manual. Every respectable home has one or two by now. They sit near the Bible and get consulted more often. This one has chapters on ventilation, on drains, on the proper airing of rooms, on the dangers lurking in carpets and curtains and cellars, and you have just reached the chapter on sleep. Your husband is downstairs, winding the clock. Your feet are on a stoneware hot water bottle, and the book is explaining to you in the calm, numbered scientific prose of the age that the air of the night bedroom is a slow poison, and that the chief source of that poison is the person lying next to you. Exhalations, that's the word the manuals love. Each pair of human lungs, the book explains. throws off so many cubic feet of vitiated air per hour. The figures are given, precise-looking, columned, air loaded with carbonic acid and with subtle animal effluvia, the waste of the body, and in a closed bedroom that waste accumulates, hour upon hour, and is breathed in again and rebreathed, passing from sleeper to sleeper. 2 people in one bed, the book says, spend the night bathing in each other's refuse air. It uses phrases like that. It compares sharing a bed to drinking from a cup someone else has already drunk from. No, worse, to drinking from a cup that is never washed. It notes gravely that the stronger constitution will rob the weaker, or the sickly will drain the sound. The old folk idea that an old person could sap a young bedfellow's vitality, now dressed up in the new laboratory vocabulary and given tables, and you lie there, in the bed your mother helped you choose, next to the dent where your husband will shortly be, and you feel the room change around you. That's what these books did. They didn't argue with the old world. They relit it. The same dark bedroom that had meant warmth and thrift and ordinary marriage for 300 American years was, by gaslight and germ theory, becoming a slightly sinister place, underventilated, overcrowded, morbid. The book recommends, in ascending order of virtue, a larger room, a wider bed, an open window in all weathers. Franklin's side of the argument, you notice, has won completely, a century late, the night air officially pardoned and the indoor air convicted in its place. And finally, for those who can manage it, the real prescription, the modern solution, the coming thing, separate beds. 1 sleeper, 1 bed. The book is not coy about it. By 1895, the advice is decades old and gathering force. As early as 1861, a popular American physician author named Dr. William Whitty Hall had published a book called Sleep. Thousands of copies, many editions, built around exactly this doctrine. Each sleeper should have his own bed, his own supply of unshared air. And the advice industry never really let go of it after that. It ran right through the end of the century and deep into the next, getting only more confident as germ theory hardened. By 1919, a health writer named Dr. Edwin Bowers would put it in a sentence so clean it could be an advertisement. "Separate beds for every sleeper," he wrote, "are as necessary as separate dishes for every eater." That's a real line in a real book, from a real doctor. Your own body, at night, reimagined as a set of dirty dishes. Now, and here, I owe you the honesty I promised at the start. Let's be clear about what was actually true. The doctors were not entirely wrong, and they were not entirely right, and the proportions matter. This is the era when tuberculosis is the great killer of adults, and tuberculosis really does pass from person to person, and it really does pass most easily to the people who share your rooms and your nights. A consumptive husband coughing through the dark 8 inches from his wife's face was genuinely dangerous to her, and the doctors urging that the sick sleep alone were doing plain good. Typhoid was real. Bad drains were real. The crusade for ventilation, for windows that opened, for bedrooms that weren't sealed boxes. That crusade saved lives. Full stop. But the specific horror of the healthy married couple, poisoning each other with ordinary breath, the arithmetic of effluvia, the strong constitution robbing the weak, that part was not science. That was the old fear of miasma, of bad air as the carrier of all disease, surviving its own scientific refutation by hiding inside the new vocabulary. The germ theorists had shown that disease came from particular microbes, not from smelly air as such, but the manuals kept the smelly air and simply added germs to it, Fear compounds faster than it corrects. And the marriage bed, warm, close, humid, breathing, sat at the exact centre of the fear. Listen to the house around you, this Brooklyn row house in 1895, because it's worth noticing how much has already changed since the tavern. You're alone in this room, waiting for one specific person. The children, you have 3, are asleep in their own room across the landing, and the older 2 have been promised, when the budget allows, beds of their own, because the manuals are very firm about children sharing. The hired girl sleeps in the attic, behind a door that closes. The house is sliced into private compartments in a way the 1774 tavern never dreamed of, and each compartment has its own door, and the doors are a kind of wealth. This is what the 19th century has been quietly building in America. The private bedroom as a moral achievement. Reformers touring the crowded tenements a mile from where you sit, write with horror about families sleeping 4 and 5 to a bed, lodgers renting floor space in the same room as the daughters. And the horror is partly about air and partly about decency, and the 2 are never fully separated. Sleeping alone is becoming what sleeping warm used to be, the thing that proves you're doing life correctly. Your husband comes up. You hear him on the stairs. You know his weight on each particular step, the 5th one's complaint, the pause at the top where he always checks the children's door. He comes in and winds his watch and sets it on the dresser and gets into the bed beside you, into his dent, and his cold hand finds your warm one under the quilt the way it has for 9 years, and he says, nodding at the book, "More drains." "Sleep," you say. It says we're poisoning each other. He considers this with the seriousness it deserves, which in his view is very little. Slowly, though, he says, and turns down the gas. And you lie there in the dark next to this man you chose, listening to him subside, and the book sits on the nightstand with its columns of cubic feet. And here is the moment I want you to feel, because the whole century turns on it, quietly, in 10,000 bedrooms exactly like this one. You are not going to leave this bed. You like this bed. The warmth of him along your side on a February night is half of what marriage physically is, as far as your body has ever been told. But something has been planted that cannot be unplanted. Tomorrow night, or some night when he has a cold, you will think of the columns. When the baby was sick last winter and slept between you, you would have thought of nothing but the baby. Next winter, you will also think of the air. The manual doesn't have to win the argument tonight. It just has to sit on the nightstand, patient as arithmetic, being modern at you. Because that's the other thing the separate bed doctrine had going for it. The thing that made it spread far beyond any actual fear of contagion. It sounded like the future. It had numbers in it. It arrived in the same books that told you to trap sewer gas and boil suspect milk and paint the nursery in washable paint. And some of those chapters were visibly, provably right. The drains really did smell better. The milk really did stop killing babies. And rightness is contagious across chapters. A woman who had watched sanitary science save her children's lives was not in a strong position to laugh at its chapter on beds. The manuals borrowed authority from their own best pages and spent it on their worst ones. Every advice industry does this. It has never stopped doing this. And notice who this advice was for, because it wasn't for everyone, and the manuals knew it. 1 sleeper, 1 bed, and 1 bed costs money, and the bed needs a bedstead and sheets and blankets and ideally a room to stand in, and rooms cost more than anything. In the tenements, the advice was science fiction. A garment worker's family in a two-room flat on the Lower East Side in 1895 could no more give each sleeper a separate bed than a separate yacht, and the manual's hygienic bedroom, airy, uncluttered, single occupancy, functioned for them the way pictures of palaces function, as a description of how the better-off lived, wearing a lab coat, which meant that from the very first, before a single furniture maker had spotted the opportunity, the separate bed carried a second meaning riding silently on top of the first. It meant health, said the doctors, but it also meant room to spare. It meant the kind of house where air and space and furniture existed in surplus. It meant money. Health that happens to display wealth is the most marketable product on earth. Somebody was going to figure that out. Down in the dark of the row house, the clock your husband wound is ticking toward the new century. He is asleep now, this warm, unworried man, breathing his convicted breath, and you are still awake on your side. Your side. Even the shared bed has quietly grown sides by now. His dent and yours, his nightstand and yours, the first soft partition. And through the wall you can hear the neighbours murmur, and through the floor the settling of coals in the kitchen stove, and somewhere out in the harbour a boat sounds once, low like a note held under water. The room is cold at the edges, the way bedrooms are always cold at the edges. The middle of the bed is warm the way the middle of beds has been warm since the tavern, since the farmhouse, since before anyone counted anything. You'll keep the bed, you and your generation, most of you, most of the time. But you'll die believing the doctors were probably right about the air. And your daughters, the ones learning right now across the landing, each in her promised future bed, that a modern girl sleeps alone. Your daughters are the ones the furniture men are going to meet in about 25 years in the most beautiful showrooms ever built. They won't stand a chance. The floor is what you notice first. You've never stood on anything like it. It's a spring afternoon in 1927, and you're 26 years old, 3 days back from a honeymoon in Atlantic City, and you and your husband have just stepped off the elevator onto the 6th floor of a department store in downtown Chicago, and the floor under your new shoes is carpet, wall to wall, ankle deep, the colour of champagne, and it swallows every footstep on the entire floor, so that the whole vast room has the hush of a church that sells furniture. They call it the model floor. It isn't a warehouse of beds in rows, the way your mother bought furniture. It's a street of little rooms, full bedrooms, built and decorated and lit, each one open on one side like a stage set, each one more finished than any room you have ever lived in. Lamps actually glowing. Satin quilts actually turned down, as if the invisible occupants might return at any moment from an invisible cocktail party. The air smells of lemon oil and new fabric and something else, something the store must pump in on purpose, a faint sweetness like face powder. Somewhere a string recording is playing at the volume of a rumour, and room after room after room you count as you walk, pretending not to count. The beds come in pairs. Twins. That's the word on the little cards, the word that has floated free of the nursery in the last few years and attached itself to marriage. Twin beds in walnut veneer with a shared headboard wall. Twin beds in the new pale enamels, apple green, French grey. Twin beds in gleaming tubular steel straight off a liner, straight out of a magazine. Between each pair, a night table with a lamp. At the foot, matching benches. Against the wall, the vanity, the chest, the highboy. Everything matched, everything a suite. And that word suite is doing enormous work on this floor because you don't buy a bed anymore, dear. You buy a bedroom, 7 pieces on installments if you like. Everyone does. A salesman materializes. It's what they do here. The carpet conceals their approach entirely. He's perhaps 50, silver at the temples, and he addresses your husband but performs for you, and within 1 minute you time him by the new watch on your new husband's wrist. He has used the words modern, scientific, and restful twice each. The single sleeper, he says, resting his hand on the footboard of an apple-green twin like a minister at a font, rests. That's the finding. Every motion your partner makes, every turn, every disturbance, telegraphs straight through a shared mattress. 2 beds, 2 sleepers, 2 complete nights of rest. All the medical men say so now, has said so for years, the profession has. He lowers his voice into confidence. And of course, it's what one sees now, in the better homes. There it is. Did you catch it? The pivot, the whole pivot of this chapter, executed in 4 sentences by a furniture salesman on a champagne carpet. The medical men say so, and it's what one sees in the better homes. Hygiene walking in the front, status riding silently behind. Exactly the arrangement the row house manual set up 30 years earlier, except now it has a price tag, a floor display, and a payment plan. Because here's what happened between the Brooklyn bedroom and this carpet, and it happened fast. The doctor's doctrine sat around for half a century as advice, sensible, vaguely virtuous, mostly unpurchased. What turned it into furniture was the trade. The furniture industry of the 1910s and 1920s, the makers, the department stores, the trade papers, the women's magazines fat with their advertising, discovered that the separate bed prescription was, from a commercial point of view, almost indecently beautiful. Consider the arithmetic, because the trade certainly did, in exactly these terms. A married couple in the old dispensation buys 1 bed, 1 mattress, 1 spring, roughly once a generation. Convert that couple to twins, and you have doubled the beds, doubled the mattresses, doubled the springs, doubled the sheets and blankets and pillows and pads, at a stroke, per household, forever. And you haven't cheapened the product, you've elevated it, because the doubling arrives wrapped in medical authority and modern taste. There may be no other case in the history of retail where the sellers were handed a doctrine that doubled the market and dignified the customer simultaneously. They did not hand it back. So through the teens and 20s, the twin bed was promoted, and I mean promoted campaign style. Model floors like this one, magazine spreads showing serene Marcelled wives each in her own bed, advice columns underwritten by the industry's ad pages, the bedroom suite pushed as the unit of purchase with twins as its most modern configuration. And it worked. It worked in Britain, and it worked here. A genuine interwar craze on both sides of the Atlantic. The historians who've dug through the catalogues and trade papers, and one of them, Hilary Hines, wrote the book on it, found the twin bed rising in those years from a hygienic oddity to the aspirational default of the up-to-date middle-class marriage. Not the majority of all beds in all houses, never that, and hold that thought for later, but the thing you were supposed to want, the thing this floor exists to make you want. And oh, it's working on you. Stand here honestly and feel it work. You grew up, let's say it plainly, 4 to a bedroom over a hardware store in Cicero, you and 3 sisters, 2 beds pushed together in winter, and you know exactly what shared sleep smells like at 6 in the morning, the crowded, warm staleness of it, hair and breath and yesterday's cooking in the blankets. That is what these apple-green twins are priced against. Not against your husband. Nobody on this floor imagines you dislike your husband. You've been married 11 days and blush easily. But against the crowd, against everything in your childhood that touched you without asking, each of these beds is a little private nation with a population of 1, and the space between them, 18 inches of champagne carpet, maybe 20, that space is the product. You're not buying the second bed, you're buying the gap. The gap is what says, we have room to spare. The gap is what your mother never had. That gap has a genealogy, by the way, though nobody on this floor would thank you for mentioning it. Your grandmother's generation put a board down the middle of a courting bed to keep 2 warm young people honest, and called it thrift and virtue. This floor has taken the bundling board, widened it to 18 inches, carpeted it, and priced it at half the total suite. The instinct to divide the bed is old. What's new is who's selling the division and what they say it means. Your husband, meanwhile, is being walked through the payments. Listen to the numbers, because the numbers are the era. The 7-piece suite, walnut veneer, twins, is $298. More than a month of his salary at the insurance office. He makes $42 a week and is proud of it. But nobody pays cash, sir. That's the point of the age. $10 down and 10 a month. And the salesman says the monthly figure the way you'd mention the weather, because installment credit is the other invention this floor runs on. Half the durable goods in America are floating on time payments by 1927. The car, the radio, the parlour set, and the bedroom has joined them. The modern marriage begins in debt and twin beds, and both are called optimism. Of course, the salesman is saying now, steering you both gently along the carpeted street to the next model room. Some couples do still prefer the double. And you must hear how he says still. He says still the way you'd say about a man that he still keeps a horse. Not wrong, just located, placed in time, and the place is the past. In this room, the double bed on display is done deliberately warm and old-fashioned. Spooled maple posts, a patchworky spread, a room composed to say farmhouse, to say your people, to say where you're from. And the twins, 4 rooms back, said where you're going, and the store knows perfectly well that in 1927 in Chicago, to a 26-year-old 3 days off her honeymoon, that is no contest at all. Not everyone bowed. I promised you honesty, so here's the descent, right on schedule, and from a direction you might not expect. The following year, 1928, over in England, Dr. Marie Stopes, the era's most famous author on marriage, a woman whose books on married love sold in the hundreds of thousands and scandalized 2 continents, no enemy of science and no prude, looked at the twin bed fashion sweeping the better homes of 2 nations and, in her book Enduring Passion, declared war on it. The twin bed, she wrote, was an invention of the devil, jealous of married happiness. Her argument was the one the whole industry had carefully not scheduled, that the shared bed was not primarily a ventilation problem, that the nightly nearness of 2 married bodies, the drowsy talk, the accidental touch, the warmth, the reconciliations that happen horizontally at midnight and could never happen across a carpeted gap, was the actual fabric of marriage, and that the hygienists and the furniture men were selling it off in the name of rest. She was nearly alone among the credentialed, and she lost. The craze rolled on for another generation. But mark her down, because she's the first credentialed voice in this story to say out loud the thing that will eventually bury the twin bed, that a marriage is not 2 adjacent hygiene projects. You buy the twins. Of course you buy the twins. Apple green, 7 pieces, $10 down, delivery Thursday. On the elevator going down, your husband holds the carbon copy of the contract folded in his breast pocket and pats it once, the way men pat things they're frightened of, and you watch the floors tick past and feel. Let's be exact about what you feel, because the whole era is in it. You feel promoted. That's the feeling. Not rested. You haven't slept in the things yet. Promoted. As if someone official had reviewed your marriage, 11 days old, and moved it up a grade, and Thursday night, in the apartment on the north side, in your own bed, in your own crisp, unshared sheets, with your husband 4 feet away in his, reading, each of you under a private lamp like 2 well-run little countries at peace. You will lie there in the almost unbearable luxury of space, nobody's elbow, nobody's breath, nobody's cold feet, and some traitor part of you, some part with 3 sisters in it, will listen to the gap. 4 feet of dark air with a night table in it, and from his own bed his voice will come quiet over the lamplight. Warm enough over there? Warm enough, you'll say, and you will be. That's the thing. Warm enough. Rested even. The salesman wasn't lying about the elbows. It will take years and another turn of this story before anyone asks the question Marie Stopes was shouting into the wind that same year. Warm enough? Compared to what? But before anyone gets around to asking, the arrangement is going to acquire one more sponsor. The doctors invented it. The stores sold it. What it needs now, what every fashion needs to become a norm, an assumption, a thing nobody decides because everybody knows, is a picture. A picture of what a respectable bedroom looks like, repeated so often, so brightly, in front of so many millions of people at once, that an entire nation memorizes it without noticing. In 1927, the picture business is out in California, and it is just about to learn to talk. The flashlight is heavier than people think. That's your first professional observation every shift. It's a November evening in 1938, and you're 19 years old, an usherette at a 1,200-seat picture palace in Kansas City, in a uniform with brass buttons and a pillbox hat. And the flashlight in your hand is a foot of knurled steel, and you're standing at the back of the dark with your beam hooded, watching the same picture for the 11th time this week. You could recite it. You practically do, moving your lips in the dark. It's a comedy about a married couple, a glossy silver gorgeous couple, her gowns alone worth the dime of admission. And right now comes the scene you've started to time your rounds by, the bedroom scene. And the bedroom is beautiful, satin everywhere, moonlight through great windows, and in the middle of it, gleaming like 2 yachts in a marina, twin beds, his and hers, quilted headboards, a modest channel of carpet between them. The husband, in striped pyjamas buttoned to the collarbone, is in his bed. The wife, in a nightgown engineered to be simultaneously magnificent and blameless, is in hers. They are having their tender scene, the reconciliation, the good line, the kiss goodnight. And to kiss her, he has to get up, cross the channel, deliver the kiss at a courteous angle, and return to his own vessel. 11 viewings in, you no longer see it. Nobody in the house sees it. 1,200 people are watching a married couple say goodnight from separate beds, and not one of them finds it worth a whisper, because by 1938 that is simply what a married bedroom looks like at the pictures. It's what it has looked like every night, in every picture, in every theatre for 4 years. 4 years. Let me give you the machinery behind the satin, because the machinery is documented to the letter, and it is one of the strangest arrangements in the history of American culture. Since 1930, the studios had a written rule book, the Motion Picture Production Code, the Hays Code after Will Hays, the industry's front office czar, a genuine document drafted with heavy input from Catholic reformers, laying out what the screen could and could not show. For its first 4 years, the code was, to be honest, a suggestion. The early 30s screen ran racy and everyone knew it. What put teeth in it was pressure. Boycott campaigns, a newly organised Legion of Decency with millions of pledge signers, and in July 1934, enforcement arrived in the person of a hard-eyed administrator named Joseph Breen. From that month forward, every script, every scene, every bedroom set of every major studio picture crossed a desk at the Production Code Administration, and nothing reached a screen in Kansas City without its seal. That's not folklore. That's the paper trail. An office, a staff, files of memos dickering over necklines and pajamas, and the placement of furniture, thousands of pages of it, preserved to this day. Now, here is where I owe you the honesty clause again, because this chapter is barnacled with myth, and the myths are almost better known than the facts. Read the code itself. You can, it's public, and you will not find the words twin beds anywhere in it. You will also not find the famous rule that every American has heard of, the one about a man and woman on a bed needing to keep one foot on the floor. Not in the document. What the document actually says is vaguer, and, in practice, mightier. That scenes dealing with sex must not be explicit. That the sanctity of marriage must be upheld. That pictures must not lower the moral standards of those who see them. That certain things, excessive and lustful kissing, suggestive postures, were banned outright. Everything else was interpretation, hammered out memo by memo between Breen's office and the studios. And in that hammering, the twin-bedded married bedroom emerged not as a written statute, but as the path of least resistance. The set dressing that sailed through the office without a fight. Put a married couple in one bed and you invited a negotiation. Who's under the covers? What's implied? What will the state censor boards do? And, critically for the money men, what will the British do? Because Britain's censors were touchier still about bedrooms, and a scene cut in London came straight out of the profits. 2 beds ended the conversation before it started. The studios, which liked profits far better than they liked realism, standardized. The 1 foot on the floor business seems to have lived the same way, as on-set rule of thumb and industry legend, not code text. I'll say it plainly, which is the deal we made at the start of tonight. The code is a document. The twin beds and the grounded foot are convention and folklore that grew around the document. The convention was real. You can watch it, title after title, 1934 onward. But nobody ever wrote it down as law. It didn't need writing down. That's what makes it interesting. Because think, you have time, the picture's running, sweep your beam along row F where somebody's got their shoes on the seat back. Think about what those 2 beds on that screen actually are. They are not medicine. No doctor ordered them. They are not merchandise. Nobody in this theatre is being sold a suite, not directly. They are an alibi. The married couple on screen must be, the code's own word, sanctified. And the single bed had become, in the negotiating logic of censors, a question. And the twin beds were the answer that no decency board in Ohio or diocese in Boston or examiner in London could object to. Hollywood took the furniture that the doctors had prescribed and the stores had sold and found a third use for it, proof of innocence, set dressing as character witness. And then Hollywood did what only Hollywood could do, which is repeat it. This is the part no doctor and no department store could have dreamed of. The health manuals reached the households that bought them. The model floor reached the couples who rode the elevator. But the pictures, in 1938, weekly movie attendance in America is commonly put at 80 million or more. And I'll flag that number honestly. It's an industry-era estimate, the trade's own count of itself, and historians argue over the exact figure. But even generously discounted, it means something like more than half the country is sitting in halls like yours every single week. And every single week the respectable married bedroom appears before them with a channel of carpet down the middle. Not as an argument. Arguments can be argued with. As scenery. As the unexamined background of 1,000 stories about other things. Nobody in row F is thinking about beds tonight, and that is exactly how the lesson goes in Deepest. A nation memorizing a bedroom the way you've memorized this picture, without once paying attention. You see the results, incidentally, in your own life, at the level where scenery becomes expectation. Your older sister married in 36. When she and her husband furnished their place out by the stockyards, she chose twins, on time payments, naturally. And when you asked her why, she didn't mention doctors, and she didn't mention the smart homes, and she certainly didn't produce a furniture trade circular. She said, and you remember the exact words, because you were sitting on one of the beds bouncing slightly when she said them, "It's what it looks like now." It, the married bedroom, looks like, as if there were a picture somewhere that bedrooms were supposed to match. There was. You'd both seen it 1,100 times. The real changes, you catch the changeover cue, the little cigarette burn in the corner that civilians never notice, and hear the projectionist hit his mark above you. And the picture rolls on toward the ending everyone came for, and let's step out of the dark a moment and follow this convention forward, because its second act is even stranger than its first. The pictures taught the lesson for a generation, 1934 into the 1950s. And just as the movie version began, ever so slightly to relax, the lesson changed schools. It moved into the living room, television, and television, young and terrified of sponsors and station owners, in a way that made even Breen's office look relaxed, adopted the separate beds convention as if it were the law of the land, which, remember, it had never been, anywhere, at any time. The great case, the one everybody of a certain age can still see with their eyes closed, arrives in October 1951. I Love Lucy. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, married on the screen as Lucy and Ricky Ricardo, and married in fact actually married, a real husband and a real wife whose real marriage was the whole publicity engine of the show, put before the cameras in a New York apartment bedroom furnished with twin beds. A real married couple, pretending to be a married couple, forbidden to be seen sharing a bed while playing themselves. And in 1952, when Lucille Ball became pregnant and the pregnancy was written into the show, a television first and a genuine national event. The episode where little Ricky arrived in January 1953 drew an audience commonly reported as larger than the inauguration of President Eisenhower the next morning. And yes, that comparison comes from the ratings trade. Flag it accordingly. Through all of it, the word pregnant itself was considered too indelicate for the air. The show said expecting. The twins stayed. 2 beds, a nightstand between, a child manifestly on the way, and a broadcast standard gazing serenely past the arithmetic. For the record, because this channel keeps its record straight. TV's history here is not quite a clean line. Back in 1947, a mostly forgotten live sitcom called Mary Kay and Johnny, starring another actually married couple, had shown its stars sharing a bed, largely unremarked. Almost none of it survives. Early live television being written on air, and it changed nothing. The convention that stuck was Lucy's. Through the 50s and into the 60s, the twin-bedded TV marriage was the standard. The Ricardos, the sitcom couples that followed them, headboard after headboard after headboard. And a second generation of Americans, this one watching from the sofa every night instead of the picture palace every week, learned the same bedroom by heart. Add it up from where you stand in the velvet dark with your heavy flashlight. A child born in 1930 could pass her entire youth. Every film from her 4th birthday, every broadcast into her 20s, without ever once seeing a respectable married couple share a bed. Not because America's actual parents all slept apart. Plenty didn't, as we're about to see. But the entire public, visible, glamorous version of marriage, the version with good lighting and good dialogue, the version everyone privately measured their own marriage against, slept in twins for nearly 30 years. The doctors had said the shared bed was unhealthy. The stores had said it was unfashionable. The screen went further than either, without saying a word. It simply arranged a furniture so that, as far as the eye of the nation could tell, the shared marital bed did not exist. The picture ends. Music up. Embrace. Upright, decorous. His hands at her back and the camera discreetly ascending, and the house lights come up warm, and 1,200 people blink and gather their coats, wives finding husbands' arms, and you stand at your post by the doors saying good night. Good night, thank you. Good night, while they file out past you into Kansas City, every last one of them carrying home, behind their eyes, one more coat of paint on the picture of what a bedroom should be. Good night, you say. Mind the step. And upstairs the projectionist rewinds the reels for tomorrow, and the marquee bulbs tick as they cool, and somewhere behind you in the emptying dark a seat folds itself up with a bang like a shot. And you swing your beam down the rows one last time, checking for gloves, for hats, for sleeping drunks, down all those empty seats where America has just spent 2 hours learning what it looks like now. So that's the machinery at full assembly. Medicine to invent it, retail to sell it, and now a picture to enforce it. 80 million admissions a week. Which brings us to the question the trade papers were asking all along. The only question the trade papers ever ask, and the one this story has so far dodged. Fine, but how many actually bought it? Out there past the marquee, in the real dark bedrooms of the real country, how far did the twin bed actually get? Further than you'd think. And the numbers, such as they are, and I'll be straight with you about exactly what they are waiting in the next room. The smell of a new mattress is a smell almost nobody alive remembers on purpose, and you would know it blindfolded at 40 paces. Cotton ticking, sizing, a ghost of machine oil, and under it something clean and blank, like paper before anything's written on it. It is a Saturday morning in April 1952, and you are 51 years old, and you have sold bedroom furniture in the same store in Columbus, Ohio for 29 years, and you're standing at the edge of your floor, you've earned the pronoun, drinking coffee from a paper cup and watching the doors, because Saturday morning is when the young couples come. 29 years. Do the arithmetic of that, because you have many times on the backs of order forms. You started in 1923 in the middle of the first twin craze, a nervous kid with a clip-on tie repeating the word scientific the way the floor manager taught you. You sold through the boom, when the suites went out on time, payments faster than the warehouse could crate them. You sold through the depression, when nothing went out at all some weeks, when men came in to ask, quietly, hats in hand, not to buy a bed, but to sell one back. You sold through the war, when the government had opinions about metal springs and the line was whatever a mills could spare. And now you're selling through this, the boom of all booms, the whole roaring young country moving to fresh-built suburbs and filling fresh-built bedrooms, and the ranch houses going up by the 1,000 out past the city line, every one of them with a master bedroom drawn on the plans, 10 by 12, wanting furniture. So let's answer the question the usherette left us with, and let's do it the way you'd do it, with the trade's own papers on the counter. How far did the twin bed actually get at its peak in the real bedrooms of America? Here is the honest answer. Nobody counted properly, because nobody counts beds the way they count cars. There was no bed census. What exists, what the historians have pulled out of the furniture and bedding trade press, the manufacturer's figures, the magazine surveys, is a scatter of estimates from people with skin in the game. The trade sheets of this era put twins at something like a third of new bedroom suite sales, and in the better price brackets more. One widely repeated industry claim from these years had roughly one American couple in 3 sleeping apart, and the marriage advice writers batted that figure back and forth as either progress or emergency, depending on the writer. And I want to be plain with you about what that number is. It comes from the people who made and sold the beds, and from magazines counting their own readers, not from any census taker with a clipboard. It is a shape, not a fact, but the shape is consistent across sources that had no reason to agree, and the shape says this: at mid-century, the twin-bedded marriage was not a curiosity. It was one of the 2 normal ways to be married in America. A minority, probably a large minority, concentrated exactly where the doctors and the model floors and the movies had aimed it. The comfortable, the modern, the respectable. In some neighbourhoods you serve. It is simply how bedrooms are done, and a young wife choosing a double might hear about it from her mother-in-law. You can read the whole thing in inventory. Walk your own floor. The suites come through in both configurations. Same headboard style, same veneer. The manufacturers long ago learned to cut both from the same patterns. But the twins carry the newer names, the aerodynamic adjectives, and the double bed models trend homier, spindles and maple, priced a notch under. The markup structure tells the same story the salesman in Chicago was telling in 1927, 2 of everything. 2 mattresses at $39.50, where one double runs $49.50. 2 sets of springs, 2 mattress pads, the sheets, and the linen department upstairs loves you for every twin conversion, because twin sheets sell in pairs forever, world without end. A twin suite is not twice the price of a double suite, but the household it furnishes will spend more on its bedroom every year for the rest of its life. The trade has known this for 30 years. The trade in this era calls the bedroom in its own papers, with the frankness of papers not meant for customers, one of the most profitable rooms in the house. But you didn't stay 29 years for the markup. Here's what keeps a man on a furniture floor into his 50s. You are, without anyone ever saying so, one of the confessors of this town. People will tell a bed salesman things they would not tell their minister, because they have to. The bed has to work, and for the bed to work you have to know the marriage. And so you know, better than any doctor and any columnist. what the twin bed marriage actually is at its peak, from the inside, in its own words. And the first thing you know is that it is not what the jokes say. Later generations, I'll spoil this now, are going to look back at the twin-bedded 50s and see nothing but a punchline. A nation of roommates in chenille. The people on your floor are not roommates. The couple you fitted last month. He's a shift foreman, sleeps days half the week, and she's up at 6 with 3 children. 2 beds means the 6 o'clock chaos doesn't cost him his afternoon sleep, and they chose the arrangement the way you'd choose a good tool. The doctor's wife who explained matter-of-fact, pointing at the sample mattresses. He's called out at night twice, 3 times a week. When they shared, she woke at every call and lay awake counting his absence. Now she sleeps, and she said this with a small dry smile you've thought about since. We like each other more at breakfast. The arthritic, the pregnant, doctor-ordered onto their own mattresses for the last months. The snorers, God's own legion, the snorers. The couples who simply sleep badly together and well apart and have decided sensibly, quietly, that 8 hours of sleep is also a gift the marriage gives itself. That's the texture the punchline flattens. At its peak, the twin bed was, for a solid block of its households, a working answer to real problems, chosen by people who kissed goodnight across the gap and meant it. The chenille spreads in the catalogue come in match pairs for a reason. Somebody is buying warmth in that format too, and yet 29 years of confessions cuts both ways, and honesty was our deal tonight. Because you have also fitted the other kind, and you know them at 50 paces now, the couples for whom the second bed is not a tool but a treaty, the ones who don't consult each other's eyes during the sale, the husband who says she kicks with the little laugh, and the wife who doesn't laugh, the wife who asks, always when he's drifted off toward the lamps, whether the beds can go on opposite walls, not adjacent, the gap requested in feet, not inches. The trade papers never mention these customers and never will, but every man on every floor in America knows them. The marriages using the century's most respectable furniture as the century's most respectable distance. In the old world, the tavern world, the farmhouse world, a marriage gone cold still shared a mattress because there was nowhere else to be. The cold had witnesses. The modern bedroom has room for the cold to be furnished, matched and monogrammed. Nobody has to say a word. That too is what the twin bed was at its peak, in some untallied fraction of those untallied bedrooms. And the marriage counsellors, who are just now setting up shop in numbers across this country, are meeting that fraction weekly and taking notes and beginning, in the women's magazines, to say something about it. You've read a couple of those columns lately, actually, in the wife's magazines that lie around the break room. The tone toward the twin bed has changed, you'd swear it. Something's turning. You can't name it yet. Here's what you can name, what the peak looks like. On a Saturday in April 1952, at the level of floorboards and order forms, it looks like the young couple coming through your doors right now. He's maybe 24, service haircut growing out. She's got the folder from the builder with the floor plan of a ranch house that exists so far as staked string in a field near Westerville. And they walk past the dinettes and the Davenports straight back to your floor. And they stop in front of the suites. And they do what every couple has done since Chicago in 1927, which is fail completely to notice that they are choosing between 2 theories of marriage, because it looks like they're choosing between walnut and blonde oak. You watch them from beside your coffee. The wife touches a twin footboard. The husband looks at the double across the aisle. Neither says anything yet. Right there. in that 4 feet of aisle, in that little silence, the whole era is balanced. And if you could freeze the entire country this morning, every showroom from here to Sacramento, you'd see that couple repeated 10,000 times, hovering between configurations, with 30 years of doctors and catalogues and code-approved bedrooms leaning gently, invisibly, on the twin side of the scale. You set down the coffee. You go to work. Morning, folks. First house? It always is this year. It always is. And because you're a confessor and not just a salesman, you'll do for them what you actually do, which is ask the questions the magazines don't. Who sleeps light? Who works nights? Who reads late? How big is that bedroom on the plan? 10 by 12. The twins will just fit with the channel, and you'll sell them whatever their answers add up to. And some Saturdays that's twins, and some Saturdays it's the double. And either way they'll get the speech about turning the mattress monthly, seams to the side, and they'll nod solemnly and never once do it. No customer in 29 years has ever once done it. But this couple, this particular Saturday, this particular couple, something happens that you will remember. They've settled nearly on the twins. The wife likes the look. It's the look of every bedroom in every picture she's grown up on. It's what it looks like now. And the husband, quiet the whole time, puts his hand flat on the double bed's mattress across the aisle, puts it down flat like a man taking an oath on something, and says, not to you, not really to her, just out loud, with a kind of puzzled mildness. My folks had one like this. That's all. 3 seconds. The wife looks at him. Something crosses the aisle between them that has nothing to do with veneer. And you stand there holding your order book, 51 years old, 29 of them on this floor, and you feel it touch the back of your neck like a draft from a door you can't see. The turn. The thing in the magazines you couldn't name, because you have heard every reason in the world to buy every bed on this floor, and you have never before heard that one. Nostalgia, aimed backward past the twins, at the double bed, at the parents' bed, at the warm, crowded before world this whole half-century of medicine and merchandising and movies was invented to correct. They buy the double. Blonde oak, $10 down. You write it up in your book, and if you'd flipped that order form over and done the other arithmetic, the kind the trade papers will be doing in a panic within the decade, you could have dated the top of the market to the hour. April 1952, Columbus, Ohio, Saturday, a young man's hand flat on a mattress. The twin bed's long climb, 1861 to here, doctor by doctor, floor by floor, reel by reel, is over. It doesn't know it yet. The suites are still moving. Lucy's twins are still on television every Monday night. The trade sheets are still quoting their 1 in 3. But the reversal has walked onto your floor in a service haircut, and it said what it came to say in 5 words. What it needs now is what the twin bed had. Experts. A doctrine. Sponsors with printing presses. They're coming. They are in fact already at their typewriters. And the strangest thing about them, the thing that makes the last movement of this story either comic or profound, and at this hour of the night I'd accept both, is that they are the same people. Not the same names, the same job, the doctor's heirs, the advice columnist's heirs, the industry's own heirs. Every institution that built the twin-bed world is about to change its mind at once, and almost none of them will pause, even for a sentence, to mention that it was ever otherwise. The magazine is open on the kitchen table, and it's open to the marriage column, and the marriage column is talking about you. It is a wet October evening in 1965, in a split level outside Hartford, Connecticut, and you are a woman of 41, married 19 years, and you are reading by the light over the stove with a dish towel still over your shoulder, and the column, one of those earnest, hugely popular counselling features, a real couple's troubles laid out and adjudicated by an expert, has reached its diagnosis. And there, in the inventory of everything wrong with this month's failing marriage, sitting right in the list between they no longer share meals and he has stopped noticing her appearance, the column places, without argument, as if it were self-evident, as if it had always been self-evident. They sleep in separate beds. You read the sentence twice. Upstairs, in the master bedroom of this house, are the twin beds you and your husband bought in 1948, cherry veneer, and in 1948 they meant exactly what everything in this story has taught them to mean, that you are doing well, doing it right, doing it the way the modern world and your own mother, a great believer in rest, your mother, agreed it should be done. 17 years those beds have held the two of you, 4 feet apart through 3 children, 1 miscarriage, 2 promotions, 1 terrifying lump that proved benign, 10,000 good nights called softly across the channel. And now the same species of magazine that once ran diagrams of twin-bedded serenity next to the mattress advertisements is telling the country in its steady expert voice that beds like yours are not a sign of modern marriage. They are a symptom. When did it turn? You'd have to have been a very close reader of the advice industry to catch the pivot, but the historians who went back through the stacks can date the drift. It starts in the late 1940s, gathers through the 50s, and by the time you're standing at your stove in 1965, it is orthodoxy. The marriage counsellors did it first. Marriage counselling itself was a new profession. Clinics, institutes, syndicated columns, a whole apparatus that barely existed before the war. And its founding celebrities built their pulpits in the women's magazines. The most famous of them, Paul Popenoe, whose American Institute of Family Relations in Los Angeles processed thousands of couples and whose name sat over the most widely read counselling feature in the country, was blunt about the bedroom for decades, in print, in exactly this spirit. The twin bed, in the counsellor's new telling, was a separator, a small legal fiction of a marriage, the first furniture of estrangement. Where the hygienists had looked at the shared bed and seen contagion, the counsellors looked at the gap and saw drift. The double bed, the same object the 1861 doctors had called a slow poison, and the 1927 salesman had filed under still, was reissued, rebranded, and sent back out as the very thing it had been convicted of preventing. Health, marital health this time, togetherness, that word, that exact word, is everywhere in the 50s magazines, a coinage of the era, practically a national policy. The bed had not changed. The prescription had reversed top to bottom inside one generation, and please note, with the same tone of settled certainty, the same columns of authority, the same absence of any admission that the establishment now urging couples together had spent the previous 50 years urging them apart. Marie Stopes, who died in 1958, did not live to collect her apology. She'd have enjoyed it. It never came. And you sit down at the kitchen table with a magazine, dish towel and all, and you do what the whole century keeps doing in this story. You take the expert seriously. Because they were right about the drains, weren't they? Because the voice is so calm. Because, be honest now, the kitchen is quiet and nobody's listening. Because the column has put its finger, with horrible professional accuracy, on something. Not a crisis. Nothing so dignified. Just 17 years of 4 feet. The gap that was rest in 1948 has been lately only gap. He falls asleep to the radio now, his radio on his nightstand. You read. The good nights got shorter by syllables a year until they are down to 2 words, and some nights lately none, just the click of his lamp. Nothing is wrong. You'd swear it before a judge. Nothing is wrong. But the columns needle has found the place where nothing is wrong the way a dentist's pick finds a tooth that only aches when touched. And now it's touched. And now you're sitting in your kitchen at 41 wondering, in 1948 they said the beds meant we were modern. Now they say the beds mean we're strangers. What do the beds mean? And the true answer, the answer this whole night has been building, is that the beds have never meant anything. Beds don't mean. People mean, and hire the furniture to say it. But that answer is cold comfort at a stove in October, and anyway, the country has already decided, and the country's new spokesman is upstairs in your own house, glowing. The television. Because the code's bedroom, the twin-bedded picture of respectability that trained 2 generations, is, right now, this very season, October 1965, collapsing, and the collapse is airing weekly. The movie code itself is in its long death rattle. Breen retired in 1954, the studios have been defying the office picture by picture ever since, and within 3 years the whole apparatus will be scrapped outright for the rating system. G, M, R, the works, in 1968. The screen simply giving up on pretending, after which movie bedrooms become, in short order, more candid than most real ones. But it's television, the tamer medium, whose small mutinies mark the turn best, because television goes into every house every night. Last season, September 1964, a pair of new comedies each put a married couple visibly into one shared bed, and America's response was to notice mostly that one of the couples was Frankenstein's monster and his vampire bride. The Munsters. Herman and Lily, monsters. Granted on their first outing the domestic reality that Lucy and Ricky, real spouses playing themselves, were denied through 6 seasons of their landmark run. The other was the young witch and her mortal husband on Bewitched. That's how conventions die on television. Not repealed, just outflanked. First by couples so far from ordinary that the censor's logic couldn't find them, and then, within a few seasons, by everybody. By decade's end, the Brady parents, a handsome, entirely human, entirely mainstream couple, will share their big double bed on ABC without a ripple, and the twin-bedded TV marriage will be extinct so fast and so completely that within one more generation, your own grandchildren will refuse to believe it existed. They will watch a Lucy rerun and ask why the married people sleep in hospital beds. That is the speed at which what it looks like now can be repainted, when every sponsor of the old picture defects at once. And the industry, the furniture and bedding men who doubled their market on the doctor's doctrine in 1927, did they go down fighting for the twin bed, their most profitable configuration? They did not. They executed the most graceful about-face in the history of American retail, and they did it because they'd found something even better to sell: acreage. Starting in the late 1950s, the mattress industry, through its promotional arm, and I want you to savour this name, the Better Sleep Council, the trade's own publicity bureau, began a coordinated national campaign against the very bed sizes it had spent 30 years installing. The argument was dimensions, and the dimensions were real. The standard double bed of the American marriage measured 54 inches across, 27 inches per sleeper, less width apiece, the campaign never tired of pointing out, than a baby's crib. And Americans of 1960 were measurably taller and heavier than the generations the old sizes were cut for. The answer arrived with royal branding. The Queen, 60 inches by 80. The King, 76 by 80. A full 22 inches wider than the double, wider than a twin per person, standardized across the industry in the early 1960s so the sheet makers and frame makers could fall in behind. Sleep like a king, the trade literally put crowns in the advertising. And here's the elegant part, the part that tells you these were the same firms that pulled off 1927. The king-size bed resolved the entire century's argument by dissolving it. The councillors wanted the couple together, one bed, one headboard, togetherness itself, photograph it for the column. The hygienists' old customers still wanted their unshared air, their motion-free mattress, their private nation. Give every sleeper 38 inches, more room than a twin, inside the shared bed. 2 beds in one. The gap internalized. The bundling board dissolved into square footage, and, the accountant's quiet miracle, a king with its frame, its special sheets, its 2 box springs, it ships to this day on 2 twin-size box springs. The twin bed never died, it just went underneath. Costs more than either configuration it replaced. The industry that had doubled the bedroom in 1927 now supersized it in 1962, changed doctrine mid-stride without a stumble, and the trade papers wrote up the conversion rates with the same satisfaction their fathers had lavished on twins. Whatever the experts prescribe, notice, the beds get more expensive. It is the one constant in this entire story. It survives every reversal, like a law of physics. So the verdict came down through the 60s from every bench at once. The councillors, the columns, the screen, the showroom. And by the 1970s the reversal was total, and totally enforced, in the way America enforces such things, by smirk. The twin-bedded marriage, respectability itself within living memory, curdled into a joke on the lips of every comedian. The sexless marriage, the roommate marriage, the something wrong in that house marriage. Couples who had slept apart contentedly for 30 years. The shift foreman, the doctor's wife, all my confessors Saturday people, found themselves, without moving a stick of furniture, reclassified from modern to pitiable by a culture that had done exactly this to their parents' double bed in the other direction and remembered none of it. The daughters of women scolded toward twins now hid the twins when company came, and 10 by 12 bedrooms across the continent received, with grunts and door frames scraping, the great flat kingdoms of the new orthodoxy, 76 inches wide, 1 per marriage, no further discussion. The discussion was closed at both ends now, closed against separateness as firmly as it had once been closed against sharing. Upstairs, that October night in Hartford, you stand a long while in the door of your own bedroom with the hall light behind you, looking at 17 years of cherry veneer. 2 beds made this morning, matching spreads. The channel of carpet worn a shade lighter where 4 feet have crossed it 10,000 times. His to yours, yours to his. The gap has traffic, whatever the columns think. And here is where I'd like the record of this particular composite evening, to show something the era's experts in either century, in either direction, never once put in a column. You knew your own bedroom better than they did. All of them. You stand there and you think about the sentence in the magazine, and you think about the click of his lamp, and then you go downstairs and you say to your husband, who is watching the news and who is underneath 19 years of habit, the same man who once patted a folded contract in an elevator, or carried your ladder of a laugh across a dance floor in 1946. Pick your own memory. You have plenty. You say, "I'm cold at night lately." He looks up. This is a man who has also, though he'd die before admitting the source, read things at the barber shop. He looks at you for a moment with the news going blue and silver behind him. "Could push the beds together," he says, "till spring." Till spring. 19 years married, and both of you needing the excuse of the thermostat, and both of you knowing it for an excuse, and neither of you saying so. And that night the Cherry twins meet in the middle of the room with a bump like two boats coming quietly alongside, and the channel of carpet disappears under them, and you lie down for the first time since 1948, within reach of this man's warmth without an appointment, and it is strange, and then it is not strange. His radio murmurs on his side. Your book stays shut on yours. Somewhere before midnight, in the dark, in the no-man's land where the two mattresses seam, the crack, every pushed-together couple in America knows the crack. His cold foot finds your shin, exactly the way a stranger's did in New Jersey in 1774, back when nobody thought anything of it at all. "Sorry," he says, half asleep. 200 years of doctrine in one mumbled word. You don't pull away. Warm enough, you think, on the very edge of sleep, in the oldest arrangement in the world, rediscovered outside Hartford by two embarrassed moderns, pretending it's about the heating bill. Warm enough. Warm enough. In the spring you don't move them back. Nobody in this story ever moves them back. The following June you buy the king. So there it is, laid end to end, the whole strange round trip. And before we let the night have you, let's walk back through it slowly, the way you'd walk back through a house turning off lights. Americans began the story in the shared bed because everyone everywhere had always been in the shared bed. Because a bed was warmth and wealth and the most expensive thing in the house, because a night alone was a night cold, and because privacy in the dark had not yet been invented, let alone required. Two founders of the Republic could split a mattress at a New Jersey inn and argue themselves to sleep about the window, and the only part anyone thought worth writing down was the argument. Then medicine came for the bed. The sanitary sentry, armed first with miasma and then with microbes, looked at two people breathing under one coverlet and saw a slow exchange of poisons, and it was right about the consumptives and wrong about the marriages, and it never much troubled to separate the two. Separate beds for every sleeper, as necessary as separate dishes for every eater. Hygiene invented the twin-bed marriage. Write that down as the first line of the verdict. Then retail found it. A doctrine that doubled every sale it touched, wrapped in white coat authority and installment credit, staged on champagne carpet by men who said scientific, and in the better homes in the same breath. Status sold what hygiene invented, second line. Then the pictures sealed it. A censor's convenience hardened into a convention, and the convention ran 400 bedrooms a year past 80 million pairs of eyes a week for a generation, and then handed the lesson to television, which taught it to the next generation off a nightstand between Lucy and Ricky. Hollywood enforced what status sold and hygiene invented. Third line. And at the top of the arc, 1 couple in 3, said the people selling the beds, and you now know exactly how much and how little to lean on that number. The whole apparatus swung around. The counsellors reclassified the gap from rest to drift. The screen's painted bedroom peeled and fell. The industry retooled from selling the space between beds to selling the space inside them. put a crown on the result, and mailed out the new sheets. The same chair the expert had always sat in, the same steady voice, the opposite prescription, and no refunds, and no apologies, and above all, no memory. Every stage of this story was announced as the obvious, eternal, healthy way for human beings to sleep, by institutions that had announced the opposite within the lifetime of the listener. The bed never changed. The bed was pine and wool and feathers the whole time. What changed was what the people standing beside the bed, holding a manual or an order book, or a shooting script or a syndicated column, could get the century to believe. That's the verdict, and this channel will not pretend it's a verdict about furniture. But I promised you the story doesn't end in 1970, and you may be lying in the evidence right now, so let's finish it honestly. The wheel is still turning. It never stopped. Somewhere in the last 20 years, quietly, without a single showroom campaign, the separate sleeping marriage began coming back. The surveys. And here's this night's last flagged number. They're surveys. Self-reported, commissioned mostly by sleep foundations and mattress companies. Our old friends. So treat the digits as a shape and not a fact. The surveys keep finding somewhere between one American couple in 4 and 1 in 3 sleeping apart for some or all of the night. Other rooms, other beds, the couch defended as a kingdom. Snoring mostly, schedules, restless legs and light sleepers, and one phone glowing at midnight. The press, needing a name for it, landed on sleep divorce, which tells you the 1960s verdict still holds the language. Separateness must be a divorce. The smirk built right into the noun. But listen to the counter-move, because you've heard this melody twice tonight and you'll recognize it. The sleep scientists and the therapists in the respectable outlets have lately begun suggesting gently, with charts, that a couple robbing each other of rest might, for their health, mind you, for the marriage's health, consider separate beds for rest. All the medical men say so now. 1861 is calling, and nobody in the whole gleaming advice industry seems to hear the accent. So no, the story has no ending, and that is the honest close. It has a rhythm. Together for warmth, apart for health, apart for status, together for love, apart for rest. The pendulum swings about once every 2 generations, and each swing arrives dressed as the final word of science, and each swing sells a remarkable amount of bedding. And underneath the whole performance, down at the level where none of it ever mattered, people have gone on doing at night what people do, drifting toward warmth when they're cold, and toward quiet when they're tired, and toward each other when they can, and calling it whatever their century requires them to call it, so that nobody thinks anything is wrong in that house. Nothing was ever wrong in that house. There were only people in the dark trying to sleep, which is the one activity in this entire story that no expert in 400 years has managed to improve by so much as a minute. And now, look at the hour. This is a bedtime channel, and tonight of all nights the subject and the assignment have been the same thing all along, and I don't intend to waste that. You've spent this whole story in other people's beds. Every one of them is still there, in a way, stacked up behind you in the dark like rooms down a long hallway. And the kindest way I know to end a night like this is to walk back down that hallway, slowly, one door at a time, and say good night to each of them properly. No more arguments, no more verdicts. The verdicts are done. From here to the end of this story, there is nothing left that can go wrong, nothing left to decide, nowhere left to be. Just the rooms, and the dark, and you. Come on. Doors first, then sleep. Start at the nearest one, the split level outside Hartford, October of 1965, where the Cherry twins have just been pushed together and the seam runs down the middle of the new-made country like a river on a map. The radio on his side has talked itself out. The two of them have settled the way old boats settle, and the house ticks as the furnace cuts off, and the rain that made the evening wet has moved off east, leaving the gutters counting slowly to themselves outside the window. Whoever they were, and they were nobody in particular, remember, they were stitched for you out of 1,000 Hartfords. The history that made their bedroom closed over them long ago, gently, the way water closes. Leave the door ajar. That house liked the hall light on. Down the hallway. Columbus, Ohio. April 1952. A Saturday evening now. The store closed. The model floor dark except for the security bulb by the freight elevator. The salesman went home hours ago, hat set straight, order book squared away in the drawer. 29 years and one strange sale heavier. The suites stand in their little roofless rooms in the half-dark walnut and blonde oak. Twins and doubles, every bed made, every bed empty, patient as furniture, which is the most patient thing there is. Somewhere out past Westerville, staked string in a field is waiting to be a bedroom. Turn off the security bulb. The beds will keep till Monday, they kept till now. The next door is a set of double doors, brass-handled, and behind them the picture palace in Kansas City is emptying for the night. November 1938. The last show is out. The usherette stands at her post in the lobby's gold light saying good night, mind the step, while the crowd buttons its coats against the weather and the heavy flashlight hangs from its strap, and upstairs the projectionist boxes the reels for the morning shipment. 6 flat cans in a strap. A whole gleaming, twin-bedded world packed up like biscuits. In a minute she'll walk the aisles one last time, beam swinging low over the empty rows, and find the usual archaeology. A glove, a program, somebody's rain hat, and then the house lights will die from the back forward, section by section, the way houses have always gone to sleep, and the marquee outside will go dark letter by letter over the wet street. Whoever she was young in a warm building full of stories, which is not a bad place to leave anyone. Let the doors swing shut on their long hinge sigh. They were built to close softly. Everything in that building was built to close softly. Further down now, and the carpet begins. You'll know this door by the carpet, champagne-coloured, ankle-deep, running right out under the door into the hall. The 6th floor in Chicago, 1927, after closing. The model rooms stand along their indoor street with their lamps still lit. The store leaves them lit. It looks like evening in a neighbourhood where nobody has ever been tired for a bad reason. And the apple-green twins wait in their room with the coverlets turned down at the same perfect angle as this morning, and will still be waiting when the elevator man brings up the first customers tomorrow at 10. The young couple from the honeymoon are across town by now, in the apartment on the north side, asleep. Her in her bed, him in his, the contract in the breast pocket of the coat on the chair, the delivery coming Thursday. Promoted, both of them, and warm enough, and never once in their lives suspecting they had walked through the middle of a story. Nobody ever suspects it. That's how the story gets everyone. Dim the lamps as you pass, not off. That floor should never go fully dark, and keep walking. The next door is narrower, and there's transom over it. And behind it the row house in Brooklyn is holding February 1895 the way brick holds cold. Up the stairs, on the 5th one, you know about the 5th one. past the children's room where 3 futures are sleeping in a row, 2 of them already promised beds of their own, past the attic door behind which the hired girl sleeps her short, hard-earned sleep. In the front bedroom, the gas is down to a bead of blue, and the manual with its columns of cubic feet lies shut on the nightstand, and the wife who read it is asleep at last on her side of the walnut bed, with her hand still in her husband's, poisoning him faithfully at the stately rate of 9 years and counting as he poisons her all night, every night, in the crime that was never a crime called marriage. The stoneware bottle at her feet has gone lukewarm. The harbour sounds once more further off now. Whoever they were, they got the next 30 years, the both of them. The manuals never did talk her out of that bed, only into worrying in it, and worry, at least, keeps no one warm. Turn the gas out the rest of the way. Franklin was right about the window. Leave it cracked. And the last door in the hallway is barely a door at all. Planks and a wooden latch, and behind it the tavern chamber in New Jersey, December the 1774, where this whole night began. The fire downstairs is banked to a red memory. The bar is across the front door, and in the one bed, the whole ancient world is still sleeping its ordinary sleep. The gentleman from Philadelphia by the wall, the drover in the middle, gone down through ale into oblivion like a stone through dark water, and you, the traveller, the edge-sleeper, the keeper of the cold rim, still there where we left you, on the outermost third of the known world with the draught at your back. The coverlet has gone unpulled, the rules held. The stranger's warmth pools in the middle of the bed the way it has pooled in the middle of beds since beds began. Free of charge, no instalments, no doctrine, the oldest heating system on earth still running quietly in the dark of the oldest arrangement there is. Nobody in that room has ever heard of an exhalation. Nobody in that room will live to. Let them keep it, the unexamined night, the last of its kind in this story. Lift the latch gently going out. It was never locked. Nothing in that world locked. And nothing in that world slept alone if it could help it. That's the hallway. Those are all the doors. And as for the real ones, the flesh and blood, documented, checkable people who walk through this story with their real names on, the record closed over each of them in its own time, and since this channel gives real fates only to real people, here they are, briefly, like headstones passed on a slow walk. John Adams and Benjamin Franklin got up the next morning, September 1776, went on to Staten Island, and failed to make peace with the British Empire, which worked out rather better for the empire of this story than anyone in the bed could have guessed. Adams set down the night, the bed, and the window lecture in his autobiography decades later, still faintly annoyed, which is how we have it. Sarah Kemble Knight rode home to Boston, kept her sharp tongue all her life, and her road journal was finally printed in 1825, generations after her death, so that we can still hear the arguing through her chamber wall. Dr. William Whitty Hall sold his editions and left his doctrine, and Dr. Edwin Bowers left his sentence about the dishes, and both were shelved and forgotten by the century that obeyed them. Marie Stopes fought everyone about everything to the end, and died in 1958, 2 years before the decade that would prove her right about the beds and mostly forget she'd said it. Joseph Breen retired in 1954 with an honorary Oscar for, in effect, 30 years of furniture placement. The code he enforced was dead by 1968. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, whose television twins kept them apart on screen through the most famous pregnancy in broadcast history, divorced in real life in 1960. Make of the furniture what you will. The historians make nothing, and neither shall we. Paul Popenoe's column outlived him into the age it helped build, and the scholars who went down into the archives and hauled this whole strange story back up into the light, the historian who mapped first sleep and second sleep across the pre-industrial dark, A. Roger E. Kirch, and the historian who read a century of catalogues and manuals to write the cultural life of the twin bed, Hilary Hines, published in 2005 and 2019, which is why a bedtime channel can tell you any of this at all, and tell you honestly which parts are documented and which parts are a furniture, trade's flattering guess. The composites, meanwhile, the traveller, the wife with the manual, the couple on the carpet, the usherette, the salesman, the woman at the stove, whoever they were, and they were everyone. The history that borrowed their eyes has returned them to the dark it found them in. No biographies attached, no fates invented, just the certainty that people very like them stood in exactly those rooms and slept, which leaves one bed unaccounted for, yours. Think about it for a moment. Not hard. Nothing tonight asks to be thought about hard anymore. Just easily, the way you'd turn something smooth over in your hand. The bed you're in right now, or the one waiting for you down the hall, however it's arranged, one sleeper or two, one bed or a bed and a half, and a dog, a king, a queen, a twin you've had since college, two singles pushed together with the seam down the middle, and the fitted sheet fighting the gap, a couch that became a bed the way couches do, a mattress on a floor in a first apartment where everything is still beginnings. However it's arranged, you now know something about it that almost nobody sleeping in America tonight knows about theirs, that it has ancestors, that its shape was argued over, that the width of it, the count of pillows on it, the number of breathing people in it, the very fact that it stands in a room with a door that shuts. Every one of those details was fought for, preached about, sold, censored, reversed, and sold again, by people whose names you now know, for reasons that had almost nothing to do with you, and everything to do with their own century's fears and fashions and profit margins. You are lying in the outcome of an argument that ran for 400 years, and here is the good news, the real good night news of this whole story. The argument is over for tonight. Every night it's over. Whatever the manuals said, whatever the columns said, whatever the neighbours' lit windows seemed to say, at this hour, in this dark, there is no expert left standing. There is only what there has only ever been underneath the entire performance. A tired human being in the warm, in the dark, letting go. And your room, if you listen to it, is doing the same things every room in this story did. Go ahead and listen. This is the last listening of the night, and it counts as rest. Somewhere there's the small tickings a house makes when the heating stands down, the same settling the row house made when the stove coals shifted, the same the tavern made when the fire was banked. Somewhere, baby, another sleeper's breathing, in your bed or through a wall. And if it's through a wall, know that the wall is a recent invention, and the breathing is not. People slept in the sound of other people's breathing for 10,000 years before anyone thought to charge extra for silence. Somewhere outside there's the far traffic that stands in for the harbour boat, for the last cart on the post road, for all the going away sounds that have always helped the staying still people fall asleep. The names change, the night doesn't. The night is the one room every generation shares. You're allowed to keep the parts of this story you liked, by the way. Sleep works better with something mild to hold. Keep the great bed of ware 10 feet wide, holding its strangers like a lifeboat holds the rescued. Keep Franklin propped on an elbow in the dark of New Brunswick, explaining the atmosphere to a man who was already asleep. Keep the bundling board, that solemn wooden chaperone, and the parents snoring approval from across the room. Keep the apple-green twins glowing on their carpet like two boats at a good mooring. Keep Lucy and Ricky calling good night across a nightstand that the whole country could see was narrower than the truth. Keep the two cherry beds outside Hartford, meeting in the middle with a bump till spring, till always. Keep the cold foot finding the shin, 1774 or 1965 or 20 minutes from now, it's the same foot, it's always the same foot. And keep the mumbled sorry, and keep the not pulling away. If this story has a heart, that's it, the not pulling away. Everything else was merchandising. And whatever your own arrangement is tonight, this story has already blessed it, because this story blesses all of them. It has to. It watched each one take its turn as the only right answer. Sleeping tangled with somebody? The whole history of the species is on your side, and the councillors of 1955, and the king-size industrial complex, and every cold farmhouse January since farmhouses began. Sleeping apart from somebody you love, for the snoring, for the schedules, for the plain animal mercy of 8 hours. Dr. Hall is on your side, and Dr. Bowers and his dishes, and the entire better bedroom aisle of 1927, and, quietly, the newest sleep science too. The pendulum is swinging your way again even now. You're not a symptom, you're just early or late, which in this story are the same thing. Sleeping alone entirely by chance or by choice or by grief, then you hold the rarest luxury in this whole 400-year account, the thing the tavern couldn't sell at any price, the thing the manuals could only promise, and the model floors could only stage, a whole warm bed, a whole night's air, a whole dark room, yours, sovereign with the coverlet unpullable by anyone. Every sleeper in this story would have understood exactly one thing about all three of you, and it's the only thing that ever mattered to any of them at this hour. The day is over, the door is shut, the bed is warm. The rest is centuries talking to themselves. Let them talk. You're done listening for a night. Feel where you are instead. One last inventory, slow, the pillow taking the whole weight of your head. Give it the whole weight. You're still holding some. You always are. There, that's it. The covers making their small climate over you. The private summer every sleeper carries into every winter. The mattress holding you the way water holds a boat that has stopped going anywhere. No heading, no watch to keep, no edge to defend. Your own breath going in and out at its old unhurried pace, the same tide the manuals try to count in cubic feet. Let them count. It can't be owned. It can only be breathed. Warmth pooling, where warmth pools in the middle of things the way it pooled in the middle of the tavern bed free of charge. The oldest inheritance you have, and the only one in this story that was never once for sale. The house is settling. The hallway of doors is dark behind you, every room of it asleep. The tavern under its snow, the row house under its harbour fog, the model floor under its lamps, the picture palace under its dead marquee, the showroom under its Monday, the split level under its moved-off rain. 3 centuries of sleepers, all of them down for the night, all of them proof. Lie back on this, it will hold. Proof that every single night in all that time, no matter what the experts said or the sellers sold or the screen showed, the night itself came anyway and took everyone gently, the believers and the doubters, the twinned and the doubled and the crowded and the alone, and gave them all the same thing and asked no questions and kept no ledger. The night has never once failed to arrive. It has arrived now. It's in the room with you. It's older than every doctrine in this story and softer than any of them. And it has been waiting, patient as furniture, for you to finish with history and come to bed. You're finished with history. You're warm enough. You're safe enough. You're tired enough. The good tired, the earned tired, the kind that comes from carrying a long story all the way to its end and setting it down without dropping anything. You have a bed and a dark room and a door that closes, and every sleeper in 400 years of this story would tell you, did tell you, each in their own century's words, that this is enough. It was always enough. It's enough. Stay there a moment longer, right on that word, because the seasons are going to turn over you now the way they turned over every room in this story, and it's worth feeling them pass. Every bed in this story kept its own calendar. In the tavern, the year was the difference between 3 to a mattress and the luxury of 2. December packed the beds tight and June emptied them out onto pallets by the open windows, and the smell of the chamber followed the weather. Wet wool in winter, hay and dust in summer, the river on the wind when the wind was right. In the row house, the seasons arrived as equipment. The stoneware bottle filled from the kettle every night from October to April, then scalded and shelved for the summer. The quilts rotated like crops. The manual's beloved open window and easy virtue in May, and an act of moral athletics in February. On the model floor there were no seasons at all. That was the point of the model floor. Eternal lamp-lit evening, 70 degrees, the weather abolished along with every other inconvenience. And maybe that's why nothing you ever buy from a place like that keeps you as warm as it looked under the lamps. The split level had its thermostat and its excuse. Till spring, they said, and spring came, and the beds stayed together because the seasons are wiser than the doctrines and always have been. Cold pushes bodies together. Heat spreads them apart. Every argument in this whole story, every manual, every showroom, every censor's memo, every column, was, underneath its costume, just the oldest weather report there is, dressed up in authority and sold by the yard. And the weather over your bed tonight, whatever it is doing to you exactly what it did to all of them, making the covers feel like an answer. Let it. The covers are an answer. They're the answer the species worked out 10,000 winters ago, and nothing in 4 centuries of expertise ever improved on a warm blanket in a dark room. They only ever argued about how many people were allowed underneath it, and if you wake in the small hours, or you might, bodies do. Bodies did it for millennia and called it nothing at all. Don't reach for worry. Remember first sleep and second sleep. The old broken rhythm, the hour of quiet, the pre-industrial dark kept in the middle of the night like a landing on a staircase. The whole crowded before world woke on that landing most nights and thought nothing of it. The farmhouse stirred, the fire got a log, a prayer got said or skipped, the baby got fed, and the dark folded everyone back down again without a single sheep counted. Waking isn't failing, it's just the landing. Lie still on it. Mend no fires, count no cubic feet, audit no marriages, and let the second sleep come up around you the way the first one did, because it will. It always did. It's coming up around you already. Feel how it comes while we're being exact about things. This story has been exact about everything else, so let's be exact about the best part. It comes from the edges in. The feet first, once they're warm, and they're warm now, or nearly, and nearly is enough at this hour. Then the legs going heavy the good way, the way they went heavy for the traveller after a full day's riding, sinking into the straw ticks creak and hollow. Then the hands unclenching from whatever they've been holding all day that they can finally stop holding. Reins, order books, flashlights, dish towels, telephones. Every century's hands hold something, and every century's hands let it go at exactly this point in the night, at exactly this depth in the warmth. Then the shoulders coming down from around the ears where the day keeps them. Then the face. The face is always last. The face doesn't believe the day is over until long after the body has signed the papers. The jaw first, then the small muscles around the eyes, then the forehead, smoothing out like a bed being made by someone patient. And then there's just the breathing, and the weight, and the hush, and you, and not very much of you, and less with every breath, which is not a loss. It's the nightly inheritance. Every sleeper in this story collected it, every night of every era, no matter what the furniture was doing. It cannot be prescribed away. It cannot be merchandised. It is collecting itself in you right now. Tomorrow that will be daylight, and standing up, and all the vertical business of being a person. Tomorrow there will be schedules and kettle and the small negotiations of every shared morning, the bathroom diplomacy, the who woke whom, the coverlet's ancient politics resumed at the ancient stand. Tomorrow the pendulum of expert opinion will still be swinging out there somewhere, gathering material, drafting with perfect confidence whatever it intends to tell your grandchildren about how sleeping was always, obviously, scientifically meant to be done. Tomorrow the beds will get more expensive. It's the one law this story ever proved. But that's tomorrow. All of that is tomorrow. And tomorrow has no jurisdiction here. It never has had. Not in the tavern, not in Brooklyn, not in Hartford, not once in 400 years. No expert ever billed the hours between midnight and first light. Right now is the only unclaimed country this story ever found, and you're in it. Right now there is only this room, this bed, this warmth, this breath. Right now nothing is being invented, nothing is being sold, nothing is being enforced, nothing is being reversed. Right now is just the night, doing the one thing it has done without instruction since before the first bed was built. Closing, slowly, like a house going dark room by room. And you've watched a house go dark room by room tonight, all the way down a long hallway, so you know exactly how gently it can be done. Centuries will pass. They tend to. The bed you're lying in will someday be as strange to the future as the great bed of ware is to you. Its dimensions quaint, its arrangement debated by historians, its little glowing bedside machines, a curiosity behind museum glass in someone's exhibit on how people used to rest. The house around you will change hands and change shapes, and the room that holds you tonight will hold strangers who will never know you are here, the way you never knew who warmed your side of the tavern mattress the night before you came. The experts of that future will have prescriptions of their own, and reversals of their own, and no memory whatsoever of ours, and they're furniture men. There will be furniture men. There are always furniture men. We'll sell the new doctrine beautifully, whatever it turns out to be, on whatever the champagne carpet of that century is. But people will still grow heavy at the end of their days, still find the dark, still curl toward warmth, or stretch out into space, whichever their own bodies vote for, whatever the signage says. Still forgive the snoring, and the cold feet, and the pulled coverlet, because the alternative is that nobody forgives anybody, and nobody ever sleeps again. And no century has ever chosen that for long. Some things don't change. The tiredness doesn't change. The warmth doesn't change. The night doesn't change. The night is the oldest room in the house, and everyone you've ever heard of has slept in it, and it has never once been redecorated. So let it have you now. You've been a traveller on a cold edge, holding your third of the known world. You've been a wife by a hissing gaslight with the future on her nightstand. You've been a bride on champagne carpet, promoted and warm enough. You've been an usherette in the velvet dark, saying goodnight to 1,200 people who never once looked at the beds. You've been a salesman with a confessor's floor and 29 years of other people's nights in his order book. You've been a woman standing in a doorway, counting 17 years of carpet-worn light where the good nights crossed. 6 pairs of borrowed eyes, and every one of them, at the end of their chapter, did exactly what you're about to do. Lay down in the argument of their era and slept right through it. And it held them. Every time, in every century, under every doctrine, it held them. It will hold you. It's holding you now. Let the day loosen its grip, finger by finger. It's had you long enough, and it took more than it needed, the way days do. And it can have you back in the morning at the usual rate. But not now. Now it lets go. Let the story set itself down somewhere in the dark beside the bed, where it will keep till morning, and past you ever needing it again. Though you'll find, some night years from now, in a hotel, in a guest room, on some strange mattress far from home, that a piece of it kept you company without being asked. Stories about beds are like that. They know where to wait. Let the sounds of wherever you are, the ticking, the traffic, the breathing beside you, or the quiet where breathing might be, the nothing, braid themselves down into that one low, steady hush that every century of sleepers has fallen asleep inside. The hush after the tavern bar dropped, the hush after the gas went out, the hush after the marquee died, the hush after the rain moved east. It's all one hush. It has been running continuously, handed from night to night since before anyone counted anything, and it is running in your room at this moment, under everything, and you can hear it now that there's nothing left in the way. Let your thoughts slow and soften and space themselves out like houses at the edge of a town, further apart now, and further, a lit window here, a lit window there, then long fields of dark between them, then mostly fields, then only fields. Let your breath be the last thing you keep, in and out, unhurried, uncounted, unowned, the same slow tide that rocked every sleeper in every room of this story. The tide no manual ever measured and no code ever censored, and no showroom ever priced, going in and out and in, a little slower now, and out, a little longer now. Let the bed hold you. It knows how. Whatever else this story taught, it taught that. Through every argument, every reversal, every century of instruction, the bed always knew how. It was the only one that never needed telling. And while you sink, let the whole long roll of them go dark one last time. Slowly, one to a breath, no hurry at all. The great oak bed in its museum, dark. The tavern bed under its snow, its 3 sleepers keeping the rules, dark. The farmhouse beds with their families sorted by size, dark. The walnut bed in Brooklyn, the manual shut, the hands still joined, dark. The apple green twins on their eternal carpet, lamps low, dark. The satin twins on the silver screen, real canned, projector cooling dark. The cherry twins outside Hartford, pushed together for good, seam and all, dark. The wide flat kingdoms of the king-size years, dark. All of them held somebody. All of them were argued over by daylight and forgiven by dark every single night, without exception, for 400 years. And now the last one on the roll is yours. This bed, this room, this hour. And there's no argument left standing anywhere in the house. And the only thing history ever really promised anybody is coming true in you right now. The day ends. The bed holds. The night keeps its appointment. You've earned this rest. Not because you did anything tonight, but listen. But listening was enough. It was always enough. Everything tonight was enough. Take it. And dream, if you dream at all, of something warm and unimportant. A banked fire behind a tavern grate, a fifth stair that complains, a folded contract in a breast pocket, a beam of orange torchlight on a wet street, a flat hand resting on a blonde oak mattress, 2 boats coming quietly alongside in the dark and holding there all night in no current at all. Small things, kept things, the kind of things the centuries never bothered to argue about, which is exactly why they lasted, and exactly why they're safe to fall asleep holding. The arguments all needed daylight. The small warm things never needed anything but this. A room going quiet, a body going heavy, a mind loosening its last knot and letting the rope slip soft into the water. It's slipping now. You can feel it if you look, so don't look. Just breathe in and out. The house is asleep. The hallway of doors is asleep. The whole 400-year argument is asleep. Every doctor and salesman and censor and counsellor of it. All of them tucked into their own centuries. All of them long since proven right and right again, and none of it mattering one feather's weight in the warm dark where you are now. Only the night is awake, and it's only awake to watch you under. The night has you now. It has held everyone in this story, every sleeper in every bed under every doctrine, and it has never dropped a single one. It never once failed to arrive, not in the tavern, not in the row house, not in the ranch house, not here. It never will. Sleep now the old way, the only way there ever was. Good night.